Dr. Chestnut, thank you so much for coming in, being a part of our Inmaricopa Spotlight series. We appreciate it. The first issue we'd like to talk about is the override. I don't think a lot of people know what it is and why it's important. So what can you tell us about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. An override is very common in the state of Arizona for public school districts, and about 75% of students in the state of Arizona attend public school districts that have an override in place. So an override is where local voters provide additional funding to their local school district to provide extra things for the school district. Maricopa Unified School District had an override in place for a number of years. An override was passed in 2005. It was a 10% override. It lasted for 7 years. We tried several times to renew that override, and we weren't successful. So the override expired in 2012. But as I mentioned, overrides are very common in our state. Kyrene Elementary School District has a 15% override in place. Tempe Union High School District has a 10% override in place. And this last month, I formed a committee of about 12 people to make a recommendation to me as to what I should recommend to the governing board about an override. And their recommendation that we discussed was a 7-year proposal for 15%, and they recommended that we run in November of 2016. They recommended that we continue that we use the bulk of the funds to hire additional teachers to reduce class size.
Some of the numbers you went over the other night at the governing board meeting were the high school classes average 30 students a class. Is that an issue with not having enough teachers or not having enough space?
Well, we have enough space, and Maricopa High School is getting crowded. We're up to over 1,900 students, but we still have room for a couple hundred more. We're also looking into the possibility of buying portable buildings. We have excess space at our middle schools. We'll have to look at that. So, yeah, space right now isn't an issue. It's really a matter of we can't afford additional teachers. And our class size situation is actually not that good, and I think it's important to look at those numbers. For example, at Maricopa High School, our PE classes are averaging 38.9 students per classroom. Science classes are averaging 36.3. Social studies are averaging 35.7. English classes are averaging 34.5. And math classes are averaging 31. And those numbers are about from a month ago. I think we're up a little bit since then. So class size is large, and that's one thing we would the board's going to have to consider in the override proposal.
Now, if you are able to bring in more teachers, you mentioned portable buildings, but the city's going to keep growing. If it does reach a certain point, is there a set number that if the high school reaches, you have to start thinking, do you switch the freshman class to the middle schools, or do you even have to open up a new high school? I mean, is there a certain number that hits?
Right, that's a good question. We're not at capacity yet, but it is something we have to start thinking about. But as I mentioned, we have capacity at our middle schools. It would be possible to move 9th grade back to the junior high level, which is something that's not unheard of and commonly done. That's something we'll have to consider. The other option would be to bring in additional portables, but if growth continues even beyond that, as you mentioned, the possibility of second high school is out there at some point in the future. We will get there, just a matter of when.
Looking at the Maricopa School District as a whole, what advantages do you have over other districts in the area, and then what are some of the weaknesses that, say, like the Kyrene School District, things like that, have?
Sure, it's no secret that Kyrene Elementary School District and Tempe Union High School District send 16 or 18 buses a day into Maricopa and transport out about 1,500 students. And we ideally would have all 1,500 of those students going to school in Maricopa because we want to serve those students. And we know that those are tough competitors that we have up there at Kyrene and Tempe Union, both A districts. We're a B district. Our goal is to be an A district, and we believe that when we become an A district, when all of our schools are earning an A, once we continue to improve, we think that parents will make the choice to put their students back in Maricopa schools. We're seeing a lot of that already. We've had a lot of students return this year. We hope that trend will continue, but we know that those two districts are excellent, and they'll always be a tough competition.
All right. And then, as far as looking at kind of the state as a whole, it's a tough situation with a lot of the education portion. Is there anything from the legislators that they could adjust that would really help you, other than funding?
Well, the state of Arizona really funds public education. Federal funding is 7 to 10% of school district budgets, so it's really a state business. And so our problem is that over the last 7 years, the state of Arizona has reduced funding to public schools by 24%. So that's a problem. And I recognize the Great Recession was in there, but we're coming out of that recession now, and I think it's time to restore funding to public schools in the state of Arizona. I am encouraged that there's a lot of discussion at the Capitol about this issue. Governor Ducey has proposed a land trust grant increase that would have to be approved by the voters, but at least it's being discussed and being talked about.
Absolutely. You hope that they start to see how important it really is and realize, hey, we need to put some more resources toward this, because the mass exodus of teachers has really become an issue for the state as a whole.
Right, that's a problem in Maricopa Unified as well. We still have positions that we have not been able to fill, and we are fortunate enough to have some good long-term substitute teachers in our school district that can fill in the short term. But that's an ongoing issue for us that we'll continue to work on.
Well, Dr. Chestnut, thank you so much for coming by. On behalf of the Maricopa Unified School District and Inmaricopa.com, I'm Adam Wolf, and we'll see you next time.